Dear friends, it's an honor to be here today with you in the struggle for the freedom of the Iranian people. Now, the topic of this day's conference is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. But what does it stand for? Well, it stands up on behalf of the mullah's evil republic through tyranny, murder, and terrorism. The IRGC is a force for political terror, both at home and abroad, a point that I've raised on numerous occasions in this House. This week, I made that point directly to Sweden's Foreign Minister, Tobias Billström, when he represented the EU presidency at the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee. I told him that the IRGC has trained, financed, armed, and provided a safe haven for groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad. I reminded him that attempted attack against the opposition rally in Paris and the threats made by Commander Hossein Salami against the office of Charlie Hebdo. That the Swedish government has been instructed by the Swedish parliament to work for the most powerful actions possible, as well as looking for possible ways to add the IRGC to the terror list, was another point that I made to the foreign minister. The minister, on his side, claimed that Sweden would act for the toughest possible EU policy towards Iran and the IRGC by way of the tools that have the most impact. I hope you noticed that caveat. By tools that have the most impact. He claimed that many IRGC commanders and entities are already listed under the human rights sanction regime. And he claimed that to add, and I quote now, to add the IRGC to the EU terror list under these circumstances would not have any practical effect. He went on to say that the sanctions for terrorism are less extensive than those for spreading weapons of mass destruction. And besides, the Council has concluded that the terror listing is a legally complex issue. Conditions must be met, and the IRGC cannot just be added due to human rights violations that take place inside Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two claims of the foreign minister that I would like to address here. The first is that links to terrorism must be proved. I have a list of 40 instances during the past 40 years in which the IRGC has committed, supported, or motivated terrorist acts abroad. Interesting, since the IRGC was founded just over 40 years ago. These acts extend to other terrorist organizations and cells that the IRGC enables financially, logistically, and through training. They have committed and provided support for assassinations, hijackings, bombings, kidnappings, cyber attacks, espionage, surveillance of Iranian dissidents, propaganda, delivery of explosives and arms. These acts of terrorism took place all over Europe in the past 40 years. In 2022, the head of Britain's MI5, neMikhaHim, stated that Iran's intelligence services had made at least 10 attempts in 2022 only to kidnap or even kill British nationals or individuals based in the United Kingdom. In 2018, Danish authorities thwarted an assassination attempt targeting an Arab Iranian activist. In 2012, the Quds force of the IRGC coordinated a Hezbollah bus suicide bomb attack that killed 5 Israeli tourists, the Bulgarian driver, and the terrorist himself, and injured more than 35 people in Burgas, Bulgaria. If that is not terrorism, my friends, I don't know what is. What about the minister's second objection? the sanctions wouldn't be effective since the weapons of mass destruction sanctions are more extensive. Well, unfortunately, those sanctions are scheduled to be lifted in October this year under the JCPOA, the very same JCPOA that the EU supports. Furthermore, and most important, placing the IRGC on the EU terrorist list constitutes a strong presumption that the Revolutionary Guard is also a terrorist organization under national legislations, including Swedish law. This would allow, for instance, Swedish prosecutors to investigate, prosecute, and try those who assist with the financing of or recruiting for the IRGC. Offenses committed under the Terrorist Offenses Act, they carry long prison sentences. The EU has the opportunity to support member states here. They should seize it. I think the real motivation behind the resistance to adding the IRGC to the EU's terrorist list is that it prevents the restoration of the JCPOA. My group, the European Conservatives and Reformists, attempted at the last plenary in Strasbourg, in which the European Parliament, as you know, called for the IRGC to be added to the terrorist list, to also have the suspension of the JCPOA included. Unfortunately, a majority of the Parliament's political groups opposed this. Josep Borrell, the EU High Representative, was recently asked if he thought the JCPOA was still alive. He insisted the JCPOA was on hold. It's not dead, but it's not moving. Recall what I said concerning Swedish law and terrorist designations. Also keep in mind what kind of positive aspects there are for the Iranian regime to kick the JCPOA sanctions can down the road. Without those sanctions, Iran can import weapons that can be used against innocent civilians, not least, or exported to Russia without any in advance approval by the Security Council of the United Nations. So I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone's listening online, when or if you meet with any of my colleagues, ask them their stance on the JCPOA. Ask them if they want to put maximum pressure on this regime. Dear friends of a secular and democratic Iran, a few months ago I had the honor of meeting His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi. His message was clear, and I would like to convey it here. He said, after 43 years, we're witnessing Iran's next revolution. The freedom fighters in Iran need to know that the world is standing up for them. Impose sanctions on the regime, put as much pressure on them as possible. Dear friends of a secular and democratic Iran, Iranians deserve better than to be ruled by Islamist kleptocrats. The Islamic Republic is an evil republic. So let us unreservedly join the Iranian people once again in saying Zan Zendegi Azadi. But not only that, and Europe should not only learn those words. My colleagues should know a little bit more Farsi. They should know these words. Jomhuri Islami, neMikhaHim, neMikhaHim, because that's the end of this struggle. Thank you.